Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight's story is productivity. We all die and avoid it until we do. When one works with it daily, one still can. One can ignore one's own when routinely seeing others. You grow accustomed, desensitized. When you work my job for as long as I have, you cease reacting to most things. I did not pick this career, it picked me. I'm a mortician's assistant. If he quits, his job is mine. Even then, I couldn't possibly see more than I already have. In all my years, I've seen everything a man in my field possibly could. In the process, I've ceased reacting to most things. There are most things and there are things. Most things are the grotesquerie expected in my field, the things I have accepted. Things are things of an entirely different nature. This story concerns them. The night was typical. My boss and I had worked all day. Our shift had ended, and the janitor would soon arrive. We were just about to go when a knock sounded on the door. Unaccustomed to visitors at this hour, we were perplexed. We answered to see a man standing in the doorway. His eyes bulged and his jaw hung low. Something had clearly shocked him. "Who are you?" I asked. "Why are you here?" "I'm Rick. I live around here. That's all you need to know for now." Behind him was a car. Its trunk was open. He waved us forth. We followed. Therein lay a picnic tarp covering a corpse. I told him if he sought to confess to murder, he should call the police. He said we just had to analyze the corpse. Though concerned, we agreed. Credit morbid curiosity. We heaved it in the air and carried it inside. I doubt anyone was watching. There we found a gurney and dropped it thereon. My boss slid off the tarp. It slid to the floor. Rick looked shocked, as if we just dropped a diamond. We ignored him. There's no need to be delicate with the dead, so long as they look good at their funerals. The grand reveal. Macabre humor is common in my field. In one sense, the corpse looked like an average man, of average height and build, with no distinguishing features. And yet, it weighed next to nothing. We could have had coffee while Rick carried it himself. Again, he looked shocked, and again, we ignored him. But I wondered again, his weight. Strange, though I had carried him with two others. I lifted his leg. Indeed, it weighed next to nothing, and almost flew in the air. But there was more. He was entirely bald. At first, we assumed he'd either lost his hair, shaved his head, or was diseased. Then noticed he was bald everywhere. I reasoned he was likely a cult member or a follower of some dubious fashion trend. However, he lacked not only hair but roots. Not only had he no hair, he never did. I was now as bewildered as Rick and eyed him knowingly. His face implied more was to come. We gathered implements, peered closer, and more there was. He did not just lack hair. He lacked veins, bones, and internal organs. Obvious why he was so easily carried. He was made not of flesh, but of rubber. I could not imagine his conception, gestation, or birth. I could only see him built in a factory, likely as a sexual aid for spinsters. I did not ask where Rick had found it. His answer would amuse and perhaps instruct, but I did not want to embarrass him. We told him our theory, returned it to his trunk, tarp included, and saw him off. Then winked to each other and bid adieu. Driving home, I glanced in the woods and wondered how many such dolls were lost there, and how many dullards had chanced upon them. As I fell asleep, I was still amused. The next night I raised the topic, and still we were amused. It was one of many of our memorable memories. We almost did not hear the knocking on our door. The clock read 1, the exact time our guest appeared the night before. The knock had the same tone and rhythm. My boss rolled his eyes. I answered the door, and there Rick was, with the same demeanor. "Don't make a habit of this," I told him. He ignored me and beckoned us to his car in the same spot. I sighed but obliged him. This is a people business. He seemed unsure for a moment, as if fearing dismissal. I called to my boss, eased his mind, and we addressed the night's offering. Again, we stared at a rubber man on a rusted gurney. We gazed at it and then at him, asking the same question as before. He gave the same answer. He had found it in the same spot in the same woods at the same time. To placate him, we performed a superficial examination, assuming he had never seen one and did not know what it entailed. Like the first, it was a rubber replica of a human body, as if I need have demonstrated that medically. At the same time, we did not like this. He was playing us. I thought of the shopkeep who had sold him these items, and his bewilderment that a man would not buy one, but two. My boss replaced the tarp and warned him to cease or face legal action. He then told him to leave and take his doll with. The man obliged, looking determined with this statement. These are not at all pranks. I'll be back tomorrow and you'll see. We shook our heads and closed the door, then left ourselves. He went home. I did not. His words and tone would not permit me. I was amused but curious. I had to know more. If he returned the next night, he should no longer be a stranger. So I detoured to find and watch him. Only minutes had passed and his car moved slowly. He could not have been home by now, where or whatever that was. I waited until my boss was gone, lest suspicions rouse. I did not like questions. I then drove to the nearby woods. Rick said he had found the dolls there, so there I could find him. I peered left and right, drifting far and farther. The road turned to gravel. The trees grew dense and the moon dimmed between them. Even if he was near, he would be invisible. I ceded defeat, then noticed the woods were not so impenetrable. A clearing stood to the right, through which light shone. I parked and studied it. It led down a driveway. At the very end stood a building silhouette, one I'd somehow never noticed. When it was built, by whom and why, I did not know. Beside it were two more silhouettes, one of a man, one of a car. Our man, his car, and his home. He was a career troublemaker, homeless and unemployed, living in an abandoned building. I returned to the main road and then home. We would take his next prank in stride. That night, I slept soundly. The next day went smoothly. We waited. Night fell. He knocked as always. I answered, smirking. He stepped forth, determined. I briefly doubted my skepticism, but reasoned he was a skilled actor. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," we answered. We walked out to our cars. He would guide us there. We agreed and left, down the main route and into the woods, where I'd gone the night before. My boss asked and I told, including our guide's home. He snorted in response. Soon we entered the forest. Rick parked where I had then. We parked behind him and stepped out. He leaned on his car and waved us forth. We obliged. Where next? This too was an act we already knew. He guided us forth, saying nothing. I anticipated his final act. We would be entertained, then rid of him at last. The closer we were, however, the less I thought this. My attitude changed quickly. He reached the building, paused, and waited for us. We did, and did not like what we saw. It was no shed or shack where an indigent would live. It was a small factory, made of brick, with a domed roof, a row of lightless windows, and a steel front door. My boss eyed me, irritated. This was unexpected. Rick motioned forth, to his chagrin. He led us around the side to the back, past a row of dark windows. I peered in, but saw nothing. Our guide found a back door and withdrew a crude homemade key. The lock clicked. The door opened, revealing only darkness. He beckoned. We obliged, both apprehensive. My boss pursed his lips. I ignored him. This was not my fault, and I would not be fired. Joined our guide in the doorway. He sighed and did the same. The sole light came from a fluorescent ceiling lamp. A hall led from the side. "Have you been?" I asked. "I haven't. I can't alone." This was not inspiring. Still we crept, the machines growing ever louder. A door appeared. The sounds came from beyond. We couldn't simply enter, even if it was unlocked. Still, we had to see. We then heard pumping fluid. Whatever that meant, whatever that was, our guide turned to us. "I'll open the door and slip inside, then hide behind something. I'll see what's going on, then whisper to you." "All right," we agreed. I thought he was insane, but I was not responsible for his safety. He crept forth while we watched tensely. Time passed. He did not return. My boss turned to leave, but I remained. Knowing I was his ride, he relented and turned back. Tension peaked. I opened the door. It flew forth, knocking me back. Either I did not know my own strength or we'd been caught. Evidently neither. Rick stood before us, looking disgusted. I struggled and regained my balance. "What did you see?" He waved us forth. I found this odd. Were there no guards? Was there no risk? Wasn't there something we ought to have feared? Still, we followed. Once inside, we no longer doubted him. There stood a wall of machinery difficult to describe. A tank filled with clear, bubbling fluid stood in the far wall, linked to a series of tubes. These pumped its contents into a series of 6-foot plastic cases. Their glasses fogged. They opened. Figures emerged. They marched forth and laid on a conveyor belt. Robot arms fit them with wigs and facial features. When they reached the end, they stood and marched to a corral on the opposite wall. There were no human workers. The figures seemed not to notice themselves or each other. At least we could watch unseen. But for how long and why? Simply watching revealed nothing. We turned and crept from the room. In the hall, we faced each other but said nothing. The walk to the back door was slow and measured. Once outside, we dashed. Our feet flew. "Do you take me seriously now?" Rick panted. Uneased silence was his answer. Our cars appeared ahead. We slipped in and hurried off. Soon we were on the road. Soon we'd return to the morgue, where we split without a word. I saw my boss off and slipped back in my car. I thought of my job. Without it, I would not be in this situation. The 24-hour diner appeared ahead. I'd only ever passed it, but could not go home, so parked and trudged inside. There, I hardly noticed the stench of fried food and cigarette smoke. Plopped on a stool and grabbed a menu. Opened it and buried my face. No one seemed to notice. Minutes passed, so I decided to feign interest. I studied my options, concealing my disgust, and settled for the least revolting item and raised my hand. The waitress nodded, evidently used to dead-eyed patrons. Soon as she turned, I rested my head on the menu. While doing so, I heard the door open, then 2 sets of footsteps. This was as expected. It was their peak business hour. I heard a clunk before me. My plate, looking even worse than it did in picture. I lifted my fork. Would it taste as bad? Instinct told me to turn and see the new arrivals. In the corner stood 2 familiar figures. They stared. I planned my exit.